Welcome to the Powerful Marketing Tips Podcast, created for overwhelmed business owners who want to build, run, and organize their marketing for good. And here's a brief overview of our guest. Today, we have an exciting episode on the power of digital marketing with Rob Morley, who is one of the founders of Fountain, a digital growth agency based in the UK and Canada. Rob has more than a decade of digital marketing experience and has worked with a range of businesses from startups to banking. He has spoken at Google events across Europe and private equity events in London. Make sure to listen to the interview to find out how to get the right people to your website through digital marketing and how to leverage your website traffic.
It doesn't really matter the industry you are in today. Digital marketing is more important today than ever for every business, really. But it can be so exhausting because there is way too much information, tactics, and ideas that we as business owners should understand and also apply in our digital marketing. So today, I am glad to have Rob Morley here with us to discuss what are, I would say, even most important steps for one business that they have to take to reach really their digital potential. So welcome, Rob.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here.
Thank you. So please share with us briefly, what do you do and what is that Fountain partnership is doing?
So I'm one of the founders of Fountain. So we're a digital marketing agency. So by category, we're a performance agency. So most of what we do is digital strategy, predictive modeling. So coming up with a strategy and then executing those strategies. So paid media, SEO, conversion optimization, analytics. So basically what we produce for clients is leads and sales. And we do that we've worked with some of the largest companies in the world, and we've all the way down to startups.
Wow, there were already so many of those amazing words digital marketers are using, SEO and things like that. So, but if we think of small businesses for a second and how they do their digital marketing today, what would you say are the biggest struggles or obstacles that they have with their digital marketing today? Why don't we reach our, digital potential?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think there's a few reasons. So I think the first is it can be a lack of understanding and knowledge. And that's totally understandable because this industry moves so fast and things are always changing. However, I would say that the foundations, the core of marketing, and especially digital marketing, hasn't really changed. So challenge one is like having a basic understanding of digital marketing, and that's something I'd recommend business owners to do. And I know that they're busy, and I know that they're spinning multiple plates, and I understand this because, we started this agency with me, my three founders in a living room, and we used to have all our bills, the things we had to pay on a whiteboard because we had no money. So I totally understand plate spinning. But some of the things we did, for example, like we didn't understand finance and accountancy, so we went and did a 1-day course, a 2-day course to have that foundation. So that's something I'd recommend all business owners to do, because I think it's very difficult to procure and hire marketing agencies, internal marketing people, if you don't understand the basics. So I think that's the first point. And then the second thing that kind of stops businesses from reaching their potential, I think, is it really then comes down to this point I've just made about who they hire. So maybe the people they hire internally, but possibly the agencies or the consultants that they outsource to. And just to dive a little bit into that, that could be then broken down into not having clear goals. So at Fountain, one of the things we say and we subscribe to is that we're a goals-based marketing agency. And it sounds really obvious. And most business owners would say, oh, yeah, I've got goals. I know where I want to take this business. But it's really interesting, all of the small and medium-sized businesses we've walked into, where they don't have a simple set of outcomes that they want from their digital marketing. So they might say, well, next year we want to generate €1 million in new revenue. And then you start to ask questions, okay, how many customers do you need to do that? How many leads do you need to generate the right amount of customers? Like what's your conversion rate from lead to sale? So I think understanding these core numbers and how they relate to our end goal, I think is really laying a solid foundation to make sure that we reach our digital potential. Otherwise, and I've seen this a lot, if you're not subscribed to goals-based marketing, you're going to fall into thinking about activity too much and worrying about tactics too much. So my ears are I'm always listening when I'm talking to especially small business owners, if they're asking my advice, and they might say things like, we need some social media, or we need to change our website. And I always say, why? Why do you think you need to do that? What is some social media? What does that even mean? So a better conversation and a better mindset to get into is saying things like, we need 250 leads in 2022, because if we get 250 leads, we'll win 30 customers, and if we win 30 customers, we'll make our €1 million. So you can see the type of thinking and the sort of questions that a small business owner needs to be thinking about. Basically, what I'm driving at is that we need to quantify marketing as much as possible. And you don't need, massive amounts of digital marketing training. You don't need to understand the depths of all these platforms and what they do, just to understand some core commercial metrics around the business. So that's really my big tip. And I think as we start to talk more about how do we find good agencies, find consultants and outsource in general, what you'll start to see is this idea of quantifying our marketing and understanding our numbers is going to be present throughout that entire relationship, and it's going to make for a better relationship down the line, so our business owner isn't sort of pulling their hair out.
Wow, that's a great tip actually, because you really need to understand the basics, right? As you just described. The same goes with the finances, for example. And I love this tip, really, because this is something that gives you this clarity, right? You would understand what are those, I would say, what kind of information the service provider needs from you. The same you were just talking about. It sounds to me that we don't know those goals because there is lack of clarity for ourselves as well. Is that what you said?
So in terms of the business owner not knowing what they want, sometimes, is that what you mean?
Exactly.
I mean, sure, that does happen. I mean, that opens up a conversation about, well, if you don't know where the business is going, maybe there is another type of mentor or a board seat or someone that needs to be brought into the business to help sort of strategize the overall vision of the business. So, what's the vision of the business? What's the mission of the business? And then once we can think about that and set that, then we can start to set quantifiable goals. But there's an interesting point there that if the business as a whole doesn't know where it's going, then we've got to ask questions about, well, why do we need to spend money on marketing?
Yeah.
What could marketing produce for us? And if we do hire a professional, an agency or a consultant, and they say, what do you want from me? What are the outcomes here? It's going to be very difficult to brief them. So I'd say if that's an issue, and look, of course with startups, some startups, especially in the tech space, they can start as one thing and then they can pivot. And that obviously, happens a lot. And if they suddenly pivot, then the sales and marketing strategy is going to change, but potentially the entire structure of the business is going to change in order to use whatever IP or data is in the business. But I'd say for the average small business owner, I don't think that's true. They've set up the business, they've started as one thing, and they have some sort of dream about what they want the business to be and where they want it to go. So I think it's important to clarify those goals first. And here's an interesting thing: the right marketing professional can help you with that. So what they can do is they can bring some realism to those goals. So if the business owner says, and I've heard this before, they said, right, we want to be the number one seller of men's shirts in the UK, and to do that we need to be selling 20 million pounds worth of shirts, and our marketing budget is 100,000. So a good marketing professional will instantly say, look, you're not going to achieve 20 million in new customer acquisition with 100,000 budget. A marketing professional can provide that realism and give the business owner food for thought around whether their marketing aspirations are realistic. So I think that's important.
It is. It is very important. So start with clarity. I love it. So, and let's imagine now I have this. I know my goals. What happens next? How should I really talk to these service providers now? I know that, okay, I want those 250 leads you mentioned. What's next?
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of structure, so there might be people listening to this podcast who they're the entrepreneur owner and they're doing all the marketing themselves and they don't want to do that anymore. There might be people listening to the podcast who are small business, but they have an internal marketing person already, and that person is overwhelmed because they're trying to do everything. And they might have turned around and said, look, I'm really good at these things over here, copy, design, but I need to outsource SEO, paper. So I just want to just appreciate for a moment that there are people, and there'll be all sorts of structures and reasons for outsourcing. It's better at this point. So if we're at the point where we now know what we want, and this has come from a strategy, this has come from a proactive time. It's not coming from a massive reaction. So the business is in disarray and it's like, oh, we need to outsource something. That's not always a good reason to choose service providers. But let's imagine for a moment that we're trying to find a digital marketing agency and we're doing it based on a solid strategy. So I think in my mind, what I want to do is just take the time, and I know our business owners here are strapped for time, but everything that we do that contributes to planning and preparation will save time in the 12 months ahead. And ideally what we want is we want to create a list of criteria of things that we're looking for in a marketing agency. And I'm going to go through those, the things that I would be looking for if I was looking for a digital marketing agency. And we can talk about how I would qualify them, and also when they come to pitch or send proposals, what I'm looking for there, and how to find a good one.
Yes, please. Let's go over them. That's very useful.
Okay, so the first tip I want to share, and I think this is really important, this is my personal opinion, and there'll be people who listen to this in the future who argue with me, fine. There are two types of marketing agency. There are generalists and there are specialists. I think to the busy small business owner, the idea of hiring a generalist over a specialist is appealing, because in their mind, a generalist agency has everything they need under one roof, and that's their selling point, that they do everything. So, the business owner might come to them and say, oh, I think I need SEO for my website, and they're like, oh, we can do your SEO, we can change your website, we'll do your logo, blah, blah, blah. And then there are specialist agencies. So we're a specialist, so we know what we're good at, and we don't want to add different things on. I would advise a small business owner that while it might seem that having possibly 2, maybe 3, over the course of a year or more, specialists, 3 different agencies say, that in my opinion, it's better to have 2 or 3 specialists that are exceptional at what they do than have one generalist. And that's purely because most generalist agencies, they will start as their business as one thing, and they'll be good at that, and they start to bolt things on. And for me, I'm not saying there aren't great generalist agencies out there, but we work with specialists. Our clients of all sizes tend to pick specialists. So that's my tip. So if the people who put together your logo, your branding, suddenly tell you they're going to do your attribution modeling, ask some serious questions about why. So here's something interesting. Most great agencies, so the ones that are exceptional at what they do, are recommended. They win their business through recommendations, not through digital marketing. And I think this surprises some people, especially business owners. So, one of the things they'll say is, I'm sure your digital marketing is exceptional. I'm sure you generate all of this business from your own skill set. And the truth is, great digital marketing companies will do some digital marketing, but actually the best business they win is because they're very, very good at what they do. And they've built trust within a community and within a network. And then they are verbally recommended. So I think for the business owner, it's always worth asking people in their networks, possibly on LinkedIn, in mastermind groups, talk to people like you, just other people that they trust to be competent to ask, do you know anyone? And to ask, good questions. So that doesn't mean to say that we can't Google or find from cold a marketing provider. That's absolutely fine. I'm just saying there's a bit more work to do in order to work out whether that agency or consultant are going to be good. I'd rather work from a recommendation and then do my research and find out whether they are truly good at what they do. So let's imagine, for instance, we've got 3 names and we're looking at their websites. One of the things I like to do, and you can do this very quickly, is look at how they communicate. So if I was to go on a website, one of the things I'm looking at is, do they speak in commercial terms rather than overly technical terms? So do they talk in terms of like outcomes, growth, hitting targets? So for me, that sort of language is as important as them, talking about the tools in the toolbox. So a lot of smaller agencies will front their tools first. So they'll say, we're a great SEO agency, and it's SEO, 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 us. And whether what we want to hear is the language of, hi, thank you for coming to our website. We understand you're a busy small business owner. You've got growth targets and outcomes in mind, and it's talking in that sort of language. So there's some of the things I'd like to see on the website and potentially in their credentials deck. Then the other thing is that first call, so when you get them on the phone, and I think that's an important thing to do. Some business owners will send out 3 emails and say, right, here's my brief, send me 3 proposals, let's get this done as quickly as possible because I'm busy. Okay, fine, that's okay. You can do it that way, but again, I'd recommend, we're coming back to this idea of doing as much work up front to prevent spending hours over the next 12 months as they execute on the marketing campaign, and that potentially going wrong or not going the way you want, and us wasting hours, down the road. So those first calls is where we want to hear them building rapport. So while they're talking commercially, and we can see that they're highly commercial, they're speaking in terms of growth, we also want to hear that they communicate human to human. And that when they're on the phone with our business owner, they're asking questions like, tell me about the business. What do you do? What makes you different? What are your values? What are your growth targets? What marketing have you done so far? Now, that might take half an hour, 45 minutes, but that is great time to spend. Because what they're doing, they're trying to understand you as a business, and that's really important. And here's what happens. Sometimes they might turn around and say, we can't work with you, and that's a good thing. Because what it means is they've done their job. They've qualified you as the business owner, and they might say, well, look, we do work in retail, but we think with where you're trying to go, we don't have that skill set. We can't do this. And that is good. That's honesty. And we want to see that. So that first call you should be hearing lots of questions. You should be giving over information. I mean, of course, it's an opportunity for the business owner to ask questions as well. And of course, there's so many questions, that we could ask. The things that I'd be interested in is, how many clients are they working with at the moment? How do they measure success? How will they communicate with me? I mean, all of these things are important. One of the things I'd be definitely looking at, which no one else would be thinking of, is values. So does the marketing agency have a set of values? And are they comparable with my personal values or the values of my business? And some people aren't sold on values. It's really interesting. I think values are really important. And I think values help differentiate us as a business. So for instance, when we're pitching, and it doesn't matter what size the company is, we always put our values in there, and I always make people go through them, which sounds like I'm being really forceful and you must read our values, but I think it's important because it can spark an interesting conversation. Okay, so they're some of the things that I'd be looking at.
Those are great. Those are great things you mentioned because the basis of every, let's say, successful communication or relationship really are the common, values and understanding. So that's that's a great thing. So values, metrics, communication. I love this because you need to know how often, you can expect some kind of information from them and how do they really show you what is happening around your business, right?
Exactly. What we're trying to do in that early stage, so this is before we pitch, but at the time of pitching, what we're trying to feel is that we can trust the agency. And I think trust comes about, that's why recommendations are being able to talk to other people about that agency, but it's also the feeling that we're getting as we're speaking to them. So for me, what sets my alarm bells off when I'm talking to any supplier is that they overpromise. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. It doesn't matter. Like, we're all capable of doing this. It's not necessarily a business skill. Like, if someone knocks at your door where you live and they're trying to sell you, broadband or religion or whatever, what are they promising? Does it sound too good to be true? Like, why should we trust them? So we have those skills and we can ask questions, but I think it does come down to feeling. And that's why the recommendations part is so important.
That's true.
And I think transparency, and that's one of our values, is really important. So if you've got nothing to hide as an agency, you've got nothing to fear. So we will say to clients, they will say, right, we want to trust you, but we need some references. So could we talk to some of your clients? No problem. So what we do is we produce a list and we say, pick some. And then we just ask those clients if they're happy to speak. And then that's it. And then they go off and they can chat with the clients about what work we've done. If the agency is large enough, they might have a net promoter score, so NPS. So NPS is obviously a way to, it's asking the question of clients, like, would you recommend this company?
And it's so easy to use. I use it many years already, and it's very convenient, and it gives you so good insight.
Exactly. And so here's something we've started doing. So last week I was on a pitch, and afterwards I sent the prospect our NPS scores with the commentary. So while we came out at 80%, which is really, really good, we still had within that like one or two below sixes, but I left them in there. And because I'm happy to say, like, we're not perfect. It's about consistency. So it's interesting. I think people appreciate that, and they appreciate that transparency and that feeling of you're not trying to portray complete perfection and that nothing will go wrong. Because sometimes things can.
Exactly.
And it's about how the agency react to that and recover from it. So let's say we've chatted with the agencies, and it might be that we've got a handful that we'd like to have pitched us or send us a proposal. One of the things I would say as a tip is that agencies hate being part of a beauty parade. So a beauty parade is for the listeners that don't know, is essentially where, you're, as a supplier, you're part of, a list of 7, 8, 12 other agencies. And I would say every year we probably get 1 or 2 requests to be part of a pitch. And a question I always ask is how many other agencies are pitching. If I hear more than 4, we're not doing it. Now, people might think, well, why does this matter? Like, surely the more I see, the better. No. What it tells us is that they haven't really defined what they want clearly. Like, if you know exactly what you want, it's fine to start off with maybe a list of 10, but you want to get that down to 3, maybe 4 max. And it's also an issue of time as well, because you have to talk to these people and listen to their pitches and ask questions. So bear in mind, if people reject coming to pitch for you, ask the question, well, how many people are pitching it as that? Put them off.
That's a good one as well.
So another tip I would look out for, so this is something that would definitely be on my list, and this can happen in an agency of any size, but I think it's less of a problem with smaller agencies, is what we call bait and switch. So this is where the business owner asks an agency to come and pitch. The most senior people in the agency come to pitch. Could be the founders like me, could be, directors. And then they never see those people again. And so they're sold on, the people that have come in and pitched that, and they can see how senior they are and how experienced they are. And they're like, great, these are the people that are working on my account. I can't wait. And then all of a sudden they discover they've got 2 18-year-olds who are running the campaign. Now, I'm not saying that 18-year-olds running your campaign is bad, because sometimes you can have natural talent that understand TikTok and new platforms inside and out better than anyone in their 30s or 40s. But what I'm saying is, in my opinion, it's better to have the people who have put together your strategy, who have talked to you about your business, who understand you now, and they're delivering that strategy. It should really be them that is working on the account. But some agencies, and again, this is more larger agencies, will have a pitch team, and that team go in to win the business, and then you have someone else. Again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think if we're talking the smaller business owner working with the smaller agency, I think it's better to ask the question, the people that will come to pitch, are they the people that are working on my account? So that is a tip, because I think it matters.
That's a good one. I've never thought about that myself, really. But as you mention it, I understand your point, why it's important, because really I would expect that the same, people are working with me, or at least on the same level, of this expertise. I expect this.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's a very good one.
And look,
okay.
There might be people who work on your account that you don't see in the pitch, and that's okay. You'll meet them later on, and that's fine. So we could talk for a whole hour about the specifics of elements of pitching and what to look for, but I'm just going to give the top things that I would look for, and they're really simple. So the first one that I think everyone would think of naturally without any ideas at all is, did they answer the brief? So you've given them a brief, and this is where this idea of quantifying our marketing as much as possible comes into play, especially with digital marketing. So if you give them a very specific brief around revenue, cost per lead, number of clients needed, blah blah blah, did they answer in those terms? Did you see those numbers throughout? Did they try to forecast? Did they try to show where they see the risk, or did they try and cover the risk up? If it feels too perfect, like this is going to go plain sailing, then ask the question, okay guys, where's the risk in all of this? Like what could potentially happen and go wrong? As I say, because sometimes things go wrong. Because we've done our homework at the start, we've qualified that agency, and it could be a consultant as well, I appreciate that. We've got to know them, we've looked for a set of values, we're looking for transparency. We want to see that translated in the pitch as well. So we want to see that consistency throughout. So if the person who you spoke to on that first call, if what they said and how they came across feels very, very different to the pitch, I'm maybe a bit worried at this point. Why the inconsistency? I think the other quality I look for as well, and again, this is for we're small business owners and we're busy, is I want a marketing agency who are proactive, because I think a complaint that I've heard as we've been sort of growing as an agency, and when we started working with small businesses, is when they were looking to swap, they say things like, I'm always chasing this agency. I'm always having to communicate and ask questions because this information isn't on my desk. This information isn't on a call.
That's crazy when a client needs to chase you. That's crazy.
100%. And it still happens now.
Yeah.
So we want to see that proactive proactiveness coming through. So one of the ways that we can look for it, I think, is really good agencies in their pitch. They'll talk about who they are for a little bit, but then they'll talk about you, the business owner, your goals, and the strategy. At the end, what they'll tend to talk about is, what does this relationship look like? How do we think it should be shaped? They'll be important to say, look, here's what we typically do, but they'll ask the question of the business owner, what's important to you? Do you want us to talk to you on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? And there should be some sense of that there is a project manager somewhere working on this. And for the small agency, one of the challenges, and this is something for business owners to bear in mind, there are really good agencies out there that have 10 people, right? Have 15 people. They're doing good work. They might only have one project manager. It depends on how they're structured, and that's fine. It's more about, at the very least, is there some form of planning? Is there a Gantt chart? And it could be that in the pitch they just say, we're going to put together a Gantt chart. That's one of the first things we want to do with you, and we share that Gantt chart or schedule, so we just know what's happening and when. And then that, for me as a business owner, would make me feel really comfortable, because I can see, okay, in March 2022, they're going to start the SEO campaign, or whatever the case might be. If there is no talk at all, no hint of project and planning, it's a good question to ask at the pitch stage, or indeed after the pitch stage. So in terms of choosing, I just want to touch on budget for a moment, and how do you think about budget? And again, professional procurement, how do we buy? You and I could probably talk for a good hour just on that subject alone. So I just want to leave with our listeners with one takeaway, which is we want to procure or buy the best talent that we can afford. We're looking for value. That's it. If you've got 3 pitches, typically there's going to be the most expensive one, a middle one, and the one that's least expensive. The question is, are they roughly in range? Now, here's something I see small business owners do all the time, and they need to stop doing this, and that is go straight for the cheapest one. So even if those pitches and the communication, if it's been roughly the same, and you're looking at it and going, yeah, I can see some differences here, but they all seem good. I'm happy with them, so I'm going to go straight for the cheapest one. If the cheapest one is really out of range, then they have to ask serious questions. So here's what it might be. Super cheap compared to other pitches tells me one or two things. The first is that you're getting a very junior team, or possibly they're using a lot of technology. So they're giving it up to machine learning platforms, automation. Now, the business owners over the next few years are going to be bombarded with this sort of thing. And again, big topic, but here's something I would think about. For me at the moment, for these machine learning platforms to really work, you need a really big data set. So we're testing these platforms every month because we're trying to find an edge. And what we tend to find is that when they show us who they've worked with, their big case studies, they're showing off all these big brands. We always look at them and go, yeah, they're some of the biggest companies in the world. Their data sets are huge. Machine learning works best when it has tons of data. How will this work, this machine learning, these algorithms for very small businesses? Now that will change in the future. They'll get better. But I'd want to, as a business owner, ask questions of, look, you guys are very reasonably priced. What's the deal here? Who's on my team? Am I getting those guys there that I saw? Or what technology are you using? So the reason this is a big problem is we've got to think down the line. If we're hiring a digital marketing agency, and let's say they're managing media spend for us, so it could be that they're managing, let's say, I don't know, 20,000 euros, 50,000 euros over the course of a year, or even bigger numbers. The media spend is always going to be larger than the management fee that we pay that agency. But if we get a really cheap agency managing that sort of media spend, it's a false economy. And if they get it wrong, all that money is burnt. So this is why doing our preparation, doing our planning, so all these things I've talked about, understanding our numbers, really choosing these people carefully, and it especially applies if they're going to be managing media, because if they burn through that media, we've lost a lot of money as a business owner. And I think that's a really important consideration. So for me, I would be looking at ask the most expensive agency on that have come through with a proposal. You guys are the most expensive. Tell me why. Why are you the most expensive? What is in that pricing structure that means that you're the most expensive? You might get good reasons. Don't. So for the business owners listening, don't think straight away it means, they're just trying to get my money. It's all about the profit. If you like them and you've qualified them and you've got recommendations, they're coming across as trustworthy, maybe they're more expensive because that is the amount of work they need to do to hit your revenue targets. But sometimes we're cynical and we just think it's a transaction, it's profit. So it's just asking for, asking those questions of why does your pricing come out there? And I think that's a really crucial thing to think about. So just consider, the takeaway tip is consider the false economy. The cheapest isn't always best.
Oh my God, I feel like this is so valuable you're sharing, really, Rob. I really appreciate this, because I feel like listening to this episode with you right now could save, so much time and money for those business owners out there. I can feel that, really.
Well, I guess what I'm talking about, I'm pulling the veil back a little bit, I'm pulling the curtain back, because some of this is kind of revealing how marketing agencies work. But, one of our values is transparency. So I'm living that value right now by talking about these things. But it's the same with the agencies that we work with, our other specialists. We like to see transparency as well. So in terms of managing, so let's say we've appointed a new agency, and we're at that point where we're signing a contract. We talked a little bit about comms, and I definitely think that's a good thing to hash out before you start the contract. And it's worth the business owner remembering that you pay for comms. So again, I've only ever seen this in small business owners. They say things like, why do I have to pay for reports? Why do I have to pay for communication? The short answer is because you're hiring a service-based business and you pay for their time. That's not very helpful. I realise that's a mean answer. I'm being slightly facetious. But it's something to bear in mind. The communication, we alluded to this earlier. How an agency communicates is really important. How they report is really important, because that is where the business owner will see, they'll get the snapshot of how the campaigns are going, what needs to be improved, what is the overall performance. And really we want to start with the numbers. So a good question for business owners to remember, to ask really of any supplier, are we on target or are we off target? Simple question. And any good professional in the marketing space should be able to answer that question without falling off their chair. If they're like, I'm kind of worried. It's a simple question. Are we on target or off target? If we're off target, that's okay. Are we off target for the week, for the month? If we're off target, where in the funnel, where in the activity that is being done, are we off target? So it's numbers first, then context, then narrative. A good marketing agency should send the right amount of information. So I've seen, I don't know, 20, 30 competitor SEO reports, mainly from smaller agencies, mainly, though not exclusively, where they're sending these 50-page SEO reports.
That's crazy.
Like,
I've seen those. Oh my God.
yeah, total nonsense. Like, most of it's drivel. Like, I'm not saying they're not important to getting the job done, but this is about, does the business owner need to see that sort of information? Now, that doesn't mean they're a bad agency. I mean, they could be technically very competent, and it might just be that it's a conversation where it's like, look, guys, I'm trying to run a business, I'm spinning plates, 50 pages, get it down to 3. I just want to see 3. What did you do this month that went well? What didn't go so well? And what are you doing next month? Are we on target or off target? Done, right?
And this is where I see that I am like a how to say it, like a translator. You know, when there are service providers, then there are clients, you know, who just don't get it, and they are like, oh my God, what should I do now with this 50 pages, right? So
yeah.
I understand that they might be very good service providers, you know, they might be very good technically and with numbers and everything, but for me, it seems like they're not so good at communicating it with this business owner who is overwhelmed, who needs to have the most important information, you know, very quickly.
Exactly, and for me, that's really the role of the account manager or the account director. And I mean, that's a good question to have on the list. So when you're meeting the team, the people who work on your account, I mean, again, even if it's a small agency, it's a small business, there really should be one commercial person who's responsible for thinking about that in-between between the client and the technical team. And they are thinking about, you know, are the team on target and what are we communicating to the client? Somebody should be playing that role. Obviously, if you're hiring one consultant, if you're outsourcing to one person, you know, we're looking for a lot here. We want, you know, the skill set to be there, good communication, good reporting skills. I mean, look, that's difficult. That's why in some situations, or a lot of situations, hiring an agency can be better because you're pulling on, you can have multiple people in a team. And it might be that, you know, in the pitch, there's 6 people working on your account. Well, there's not going to be 6 people working on it all the time. There might be 2 people checking it every day, and you might have one person who's there 4 hours a month. And that's fine, that's good, and that's what we want. We want the right people working on it in the right quantities to kind of hit the targets we've asked for. But there could be other, and to your point, what you said there is a really interesting point, because it might be that, you know, when we started the business, like, I don't mind saying, you know, we were finding our feet in those first 2 years. And I remember we'd won a client who was ex-corporate, and he could see that we were green. We were, you know, relatively inexperienced. But he was good about it. He said, look, if you're going to talk to corporates, this is what you need to do. You need to change your reports in this way. You need to do this. You need to do that. And that's fine. It might be that the business owner, the entrepreneur, has recognized that the agency they have are very, very talented. They're just not so good at, you know, the reporting and the comms. And it's fine to say, look, guys, here's the standard I want. Just do that for me, and you'll be better for me, but you'll also be better for other clients down the road. So going back to that point, you know, you're paying for that time. So it's about finding the right, that midpoint of having the right amount of information. Now, some clients forget this, and this is another tip for entrepreneurs. Some entrepreneurs are really busy because they spend too much time focusing on the things that don't matter. We've had clients in the past that, you know, unfortunately or unfortunately, we've had to sack because they're just looking at the numbers daily. You don't need to look at the numbers on a daily basis. It's a bit like buying a stock. So say you wanted to invest in Tesla, right? Because I'm a massive Tesla fan. I love Elon Musk. You do your research, you look at the investment thesis, you buy the stock knowing that it's a 5 to 10 year play. What you're not going to do is check that stock every day because it's pointless. You're going to look at the monthly moves, the quarterly moves, the yearly moves on the price to decide whether it's performing how you want. I think working with a marketing agency, especially performance, is exactly the same thing. If you're constantly on the phone, looking at numbers, asking questions, you're wasting your own money. So my advice is don't do it. Again, if we've done our preparation and our research and we've hired these people in the correct manner, we shouldn't have these problems, down the line. Yeah. Some clients like Slack, and so that's just another tip. So it might be that, I know when I was starting the business, when we were running it, you get to that point where you sort of hate email, because it's just everyone wants to email, and some people hide behind emails, whether that's your employees or your suppliers. And that's why, Slack is, I think, kind of revolutionary. So that's a good thing, if an agency says, look, why don't we put you in a Slack channel, it'll have your team in it, and then, it could be just quick questions, or the agency needs things from the client. So that's another way to kind of, get that moving. And I think that's a really interesting point around the client's responsibility. Like, one of the reasons that a campaign doesn't go according to plan is because the client didn't uphold their end of the relationship. So one of the things that we put into our service level agreements is we have a series of things that we need from the client. So while we know we're the supplier and we say, look, we will respond to you for this sort of issue within 8 hours, this sort of issue within 4 hours, there are also things that we will need from you as a client. But the longer you take to give them to us, the more money you're leaving on the table, ultimately. So we're always very clear with the client, look, we haven't got access to this platform, or, we need these, creative assets, or whatever it might be. If you're taking days and weeks to get back to your agency, so that's something I would add to the list. Again, it's a conversation as you're maybe signing the contract, or around the time of negotiation, is like, what do you need from me? I'm a busy entrepreneur, I'm spending my plates, we've talked about this, blah, blah, blah. How much time do you think you'll need from me on a monthly basis? And I would say that a lot of that is going to be front loaded. So month 1, month 2, when the agency are bedding in, and that's really the proof of concept phase, if we think about it. And that's where I think the business owner and their business that's where they're going to be putting in the most time, because a good agency, as I say, is going to really want to get under the skin of that business to understand them in order to execute these campaigns properly. So there really, I think I've covered most of the broad strokes of
I believe so. It's been more than I expected already. When I hear you saying that, actually it's as with every relationship, it's the two-way road, right? It needs this very good collaboration, in communication as well. So both sides are responsible for the results, really. So what I hear you saying is that we should hire slowly, right? And of course, fire quickly as well.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. And that's something to consider with the contract. Generally, you have more control, I think, more ability to put break clauses in to a contract when you're a smaller business working with a smaller agency. And I think that's fair. So it might be, look, it's a 12-month contract, an 18-month contract, and we have an option to break the contract at 6 months. I think if you're a business who has no data and you really have very little digital marketing history, it is absolutely fair to give your agency 3 to 6 months to prove their strategy. And that's something to really bear in mind. If it's not going well by week 3, that's not the time to be worried and panic. Like, we've run campaigns with clients that we've had for 5-6 years, where when we started, the cost of acquisition was 20-30% more than what we said it would be. Does that make us bad at what we do? No, it was a proof of concept. We were trying something. It came down over time and then came below what they wanted. Again, that's why the numbers come into play. It's important. But if all the things we've talked about, if they are failing in terms of performance, in terms of communication, if you feel like the trust is gone and the transparency isn't there, or potentially was never there, but as I've said, we're looking for that, then what I would do is I'd maybe go back to some of the agencies you looked at the start of the process and think about, did you make a mistake? Was there an agency there? And you could call them up and say, and most business owners won't do this because ego gets in the way. It's fine to call an agent and say, you know what, like, I made a mistake. Maybe I should have been talking to you. I think I'm going to fire this agency. It's coming up to 6 months. We've got a break clause. But I would get ahead of it. So I think if by month 4 or 5, say, and this is just an example, you feel it's not going in the right direction and they're not turning it around, then that's the time to start prepping to have someone in place to take over. And you know what, for the small business owner, that is probably going to happen. Because, you know, I'm giving these tips today, I'm giving this perfect list, and the reality is it's really hard to find perfection. You know, we're going to try and do our best here as we go out into the world and we look for a digital marketing partner or any supplier to find the best we can. As I said, we're looking for value with the budget that we've got, but we're not going to find perfection. So it's okay if the business owner, they go through a journey where maybe they end up working with 2, maybe 3 different agencies. It's not failure, as the saying goes. It's just feedback. It's just then thinking about, right, how do I optimize the process? Where did I go wrong when I chose this agency? But I can tell you now that I know businesses local to here that I've known for 11 years that have never grown because they don't sit down and plan. They don't sit down and prepare, and they don't sit down and think about, what do I want out of this? What am I looking for? Not just in terms of their marketing partner, but in terms of any supplier. And their business doesn't grow, and what do? They blame externally. It's never them. It's always, oh, I hired this bad supplier. This woman over here, you know, screwed me out of money, or this guy over here was, you know, not what he said he was. Yes, the suppliers, who they are and what they do, matters, of course, but you also have to ask honest questions as a business owner. You know? That's
a very honest point, because I just recently read a book called Better Before Bigger by Nick Crump. I also had an interview here with him, and he was also saying pretty much the same thing, and he suggested that business owners should spend 20% of their time working with strategy and planning. Otherwise, they cannot grow, and they are, you know, in this hamster wheel, or how you call it, right? So
100%.
that is very, very important thing to remember, or to remind to every business owner. So thank you, Rob. It's been very delightful to listen to you. You know, it's full of very useful information what you shared today. I feel like if there is a business owner looking for a digital partner, it's very easy for them right now to just listen to this whole episode and check all the boxes where they need to, right?
Great. Well, I'm glad it's been useful. So.
It has been. Rob, please tell us where you want people to go if they want to learn more about what you do, because I'm sure they do.
Yeah, so our website is fountainpartnership.co.uk. So that's fountain like a water fountain, partnership.co.uk. And there they'll find, we've got articles and links to our YouTube channel and podcasts and things that we've done. So they can find out more about us there. You can find me on LinkedIn. So if you see my face, to look for Rob Morley, Morley. And I'm happy if people want to send questions or clarify anything. I'm always kind of happy to help. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Rob, because I'm feeling right now that we need to have another interview because there are so much more we can discuss here around digital marketing.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure we could probably do 7 or 8 podcasts
Exactly.
talking about various things if we wanted to. It's such a big subject.
It is. It is huge. So thank you again. But please, before we go, please share and comment on the beforehand shared song and quote. You know, the one that inspires you to take action.
Oh, right. That's right. So my song was Curtis Mayfield, Moving On Up. And I like if you've got it on Spotify, listen to the extended remix. It's a really upbeat song. So if you're feeling a bit down, it's worth listening to. It's got a brilliant solo on it. Yeah, it's just a solid song. I love listening to that when on winter days or if I'm feeling a bit gloomy.
Perfect. It goes to our list.
Yeah, definitely. And then the quote, and I think I put this in the moment because I'd heard it the week before. Okay, but I love the quote, and it's one of those things, you know, when you hear a good quote and you start to see it in life. And it was a quote. It came from I think a New York lawyer originally, and it was also used by I think a baseball coach in America. And it goes like this. So there's 2 types of people in the world: those that are humble and those that are about to be humbled. And I think the context of it was the solicitor was, you know, talking about people he would represent or see in court, and they had no understanding of, you know, if things went wrong in court, what does that mean for their lives? So it was just a general, I think, piece of wisdom about, do we wake up each day in a humble state? Because it's an important state to feel, I think.
That's deep. Well, thank you, Rob, again. Those are very, very good quote and very, very, it's a great song. I know this because I just, I searched for this before our interview here. So it will be on our list. And
Great.
I am so happy that you took this time for this conversation. It was inspiring. It was very useful. I am sure it will save a lot of time and money for business owners already. So keep on doing great work with helping those companies, you know, to uncover the growth opportunities.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun, and I hope we can do it again.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Powerful Marketing Tips podcast. Make sure to link up with us at our free monthly international mastermind event. Just go to powerful-marketers.com/mastermind for registration. And one thing that would really help us and other new potential listeners is if you would rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in to listen. Until next time, take care.